Welcome back, movie buffs. Longtime subscribers know I love recommending messed up movies, and in this episode, I've got 15 truly f***ed up movies you can currently watch for free on Tubi. This list includes some shocking thrillers, a couple of really weird movies, and even a few pretty funny movies, all of them f***ed up as can be. Thanks to AG1 for sponsoring this video, but we'll talk more about them later in the video. Right now, I want to talk about my number 15 pick, the Stanford Prison Experiment. Now, you may have heard of this experiment before, and this is not the only movie to depict it. There's actually one with Adrian Brody titled The Experiment that's much more fanciful. The movie I'm talking about here, though, depicts the real Stanford Prison Experiment, or at least a reenactment of it. And in this experiment, some of these student test subjects are put into two groups, prisoners and prison guards, and for a fairly extended period of time, they allow this experiment to play out, and it goes into some wild directions, and everything you see in this movie is fairly accurate. The story of the experiment itself is interesting enough, but then when it's brought to life with a bunch of really good actors in this movie, it actually hits home even harder than the documentary I saw on this same experiment. Now, I said there was going to be some weird ones, and my next pick is easily the weirdest movie on this list. Actually, no, it's not. It's not. Somehow there's a weirder movie on this list, but R100 is really not going to be for the faint of heart. While this movie is definitely not safe for work, and honestly not even safe to watch if your kids are awake or even in the same county, but I'll try to refrain from showing anything too graphic in this video. But a man's quest for ultimate joy leads him to hire this dominatrix club where a different dominatrix is going to surprise him at random and beat the shit out of him, or worse. Now, the movie itself does have quite a bit of levity, but it's weird. It's not a full-out comedy, yet there's just wild, wacky stuff happening at every turn, and it does have its dark moments. Now, the concept here is messed up enough to earn a spot on the list, but some of the sequences are so wild. This one's really just for very adventurous viewers, and you're gonna have to read subtitles because it's all in Japanese. But if it's been a while since you've seen a truly wild-ass movie, R100 is definitely gonna scratch that itch. If you don't like it, don't blame me, I warned you. But my number 13 pick is a little bit more of a crowd pleaser. While Exam is not really a mainstream movie, it is a pretty good hidden gem actually, it still will appeal to most people watching this video. It actually revolves around a group of young professionals taking an exam that is actually not a written exam. They have to figure out what's happening, and it turns into somewhat of an escape room type of a story. In fact, if you like escape rooms, you're going to absolutely love this movie. But the setup here is interesting too. They're all competing for a premium position at this company. It's almost kind of a Willy Wonka type of a setup where someone, the winner or let's say survivor of this exam, is going to be given the keys to the kingdom. So there's a lot at stake here, and considering there's no one uber famous in it, it really is just a killer flick. If you clicked on this video wanting to watch something a little f***ed up that you've never seen before, Exam is going to be a great pick even though it's towards the back of the list. Autofocus is the story of Bob Crane, a famous TV actor who was the star of Hogan's Heroes. In this movie, he's actually played by Greg Kinnear, and this is the story of his sex addiction. And what's so weird about Autofocus is he's not just a sex addict, he actually gets very addicted to filming and taking photos. Kinnear is great in the movie, but Willem Dafoe actually plays his wingman, and he is a wild dude. I love Willem Dafoe, and he's actually playing a character fairly different from anyone you've seen before. The movie is fairly graphic, but this is actually written and directed by Paul Schrader, who is most famous for writing Taxi Driver. But he's also gone on to direct a slew of movies, most of them pretty damn weird. But Autofocus is actually one of his most watchable movies, meaning it's the least weird, but still the story of Bob Crane is fairly messed up. Okay, remember that moment earlier when I said R100 was the weirdest movie and then I was like, oh no, it's not. That's because I forgot Greener Grass was on this list.
She's so cute.
Lisa, do you want her?
Are you sure?
Take her. She's yours now.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy.
Now, this is a funny movie, but really only for people who love weird comedy. I honestly think if you like Tim Heidecker's brand of comedy, you're going to love Greener Grass. It's not exactly the same, but it's in the same wheelhouse. And while the flavor of Greener Grass is truly unique, the closest comparison I could make is like David Lynch crossed with Napoleon Dynamite. Now, if that doesn't pique your interest at all, then Greener Grass is probably not going to be for you. But if you kind of went, ooh, when I said that, then I'm telling you, this is a crazy movie that made all sorts of bold choices. I honestly kind of can't believe that this movie got made. And unlike a lot of movies sort of in this wheelhouse, it's not just weird for the sake of being weird. It actually tries to be funny and is pretty successful most of the way for people who like that brand of humor only. But speaking of greens, it's a great time to mention today's sponsor, AG1 by Athletic Greens. So ever since I realized that the pandemic was going to last longer than 2 weeks, I have started prioritizing my health. It's been a journey over a few years. It's taken a while, but I'm literally in the best shape of my life. I work out multiple times a week and drink Athletic Greens every day as part of my health regimen. AG1 is an easy, convenient powder that you mix into an 8-ounce glass of water, and it's packed to the brim with vitamins, minerals, probiotics, and adaptogens, and it doesn't taste like a green drink. It's got kind of a sweet tropical pineapple flavor that makes it really easy to knock back. I mean, there's enough in AG1 to replace a fistful of vitamins, and it's all the stuff you need to help support a healthy immune system. Right now, when my viewers order, they can get a free gift of vitamin D3 and K2, which will further support a healthy immune system. They're also going to send you 5 free travel packs. But when you order, you get all this in the box: the nice big bag of Athletic Greens, a nice metal tin for storing it in the fridge, the bottle, the metal scoop, all top quality stuff. And again, all you got to do is go to the link in the description. You're going to get a free year supply of vitamin D3 and K2 and some extra travel packs. It's a fantastic deal. But speaking of great stuff, let's talk about the rest of the movies on this list. Now, my number 10 pick is still a hidden gem movie a lot of people have missed, but it probably fits in more with what you were expecting when you clicked on this video. This is a dark, twisted indie thriller. There's nothing too spectacular happening on screen, nothing supernatural, just solid storytelling all through filmmaking. This has some really twisted moments in it that are done fairly subtly, again, with little to no special effects. And the less you know about this movie, I think the more you'll enjoy it. But the basic setup is you're following a group of high school boys who get up to some shenanigans. Something awful happens by accident, and then most of the movie actually deals with the aftermath of a tragedy. It all feels fairly authentic, but the soundtrack is a little bit amped up. The filmmaking style's got a little bit of an edge to it, making this a pretty exceptional movie for something done at this budget level. Now, my next pick is another dark, low-budget thriller, actually from the 90s, and it had a comedy spoof made after it that I believe was more popular and more successful than the original movie, Dead Man's Curve. Now, that is the official title on IMDb, but on Tubi, it's just titled The Curve, and it may be because the spoof was actually titled Dead Man on Campus, and they wanted to make the titles fairly different. But the setup here is that a couple of college students that are failing out determine that if their roommate commits suicide, they'll actually be given a pass and allowed to have A's for the semester. This actually features an early role from Kerry Russell before she was pretty famous. Matthew Lillard is spectacular in this movie, like he usually was in the 90s, and it just makes for a solid throwback thriller. Next up, I've got another movie from the 90s, and another one with just some bold choices in it, Bad Lieutenant.
How much did they say? 500. Money now. Got it.
Now, this stars legendary Harvey Keitel, and it is a wild role for him to take. It's completely unnecessary for him to do this movie when he did, and he actually has to do quite a bit of awful things on screen in this movie, ultimately making it one of his greatest performances. Famous director Werner Herzog actually did a remake of this starring Nicolas Cage that's okay, but the classic is a true gem of a up movie. If you've never seen it and you like twisted stuff, Bad Lieutenant is just one of the classics. Okay, my number 7 pick is gonna be the most shocking. The one that, if you're the least bit squeamish, I'm telling you now, before even setting the movie up, do not watch Kill List. Now, the setup here is that you follow a hitman who is assigned 3 different kills, given a kill list. Kind of a standard setup, but the Kill List is not a standard movie. This actually starts off feeling like something you've seen before, and then just descends into madness. I mean, the writing and directing here is just diabolical. It really does a magic trick on the audience. I mean, there's a crazy cult involved. There's aspects of this movie that feel a little bit like Ari Aster on a much lower budget. There's even a few practical effects in this movie that are just mind-blowing and, again, completely shocking. If that sounds like you, Kill List is a memorable one. But again, if you're easily disgusted, pick something else off of this list. So far, Greener Grass is the only real comedy on the list, but my next pick definitely qualifies as one, even though it does have some heavier themes than Greener Grass. Super is actually written and directed by James Gunn and stars Rainn Wilson, who most of you know as Dwight from The Office, as an average man who decides to start beating up bad guys. And I use my words carefully there. He does not become a superhero in this movie. He just makes a homemade costume and starts hitting people with a monkey wrench. And the movie itself is as messed up as it sounds. It actually doesn't go into a direction where he's rescuing innocent people. He's really just basically a maniac in this movie. Kevin Bacon has an incredible role in this movie. I mean, I won't say this is my favorite role of his, but as far as indie roles, like little ones he's done, this is easily one of my favorites. And it is a solid James Gunn movie. If you like his better movies, like The Suicide Squad, Slither, stuff like that, I highly recommend Super. It's also one of his lesser known movies. My number 5 pick is easily kind of the most high drama movie on the list, meaning it's mostly talky, but it's all excellent stuff. You've actually got Jeff Bridges and Tim Robbins both sparring in Arlington Road. In this movie, Jeff Bridges plays an average guy who begins to suspect that his neighbor, played by Tim Robbins, is a domestic terrorist. What's so great about Arlington Road is you don't really know if he's starting to lose his mind and lose his grip on reality, or if this guy is actually planning on blowing up some sort of government building. This is one of those movies I just don't know if it would have worked without some heavy-hitting actors like these two guys, and they both trade jabs in this really fantastic way. The movie itself is a little bit more old-fashioned and dry, but if you're a fan of either of those guys, or you're just interested in the setup, then Arlington Road is a fantastic movie. Alright, Val Kilmer has some killer flicks in his filmography, but he's also got some smaller movies that just didn't get enough attention. One of the best of those, in my opinion, is The Salton Sea. Now, in this movie, he actually plays a drug addict, and the first 30 minutes or so actually reminded me a lot of Trainspotting. In fact, I feel like they kind of ripped off that movie a little bit, but in a really fantastic way. This movie has its own flavor. Val Kilmer is amazing in it, but you've got an incredible supporting cast in this movie. I mean, Peter Sarsgaard, Adam Goldberg, Vincent D'Onofrio, Luis Guzman, R. Lee Ermey, Meatloaf, Danny Trejo. And the druggy aspect of the movie is cool, like the filmmaking style is great, but The Salton Sea actually turns into a mystery movie. I won't say any more than that, but there are just some amazing performances in this one, especially the one from Vincent D'Onofrio. He is a wild dude in this movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It feels like it falls just short of being truly great, but in my book, that actually makes for a pretty fantastic movie, especially if you've never seen or heard of it, which is why it's ranked so high. Now, my number 3 pick is easily the most upsetting movie on this list. It's titled The Nightingale. This is actually set in Tasmania in the early 1800s, and it's a pretty rugged place to live, even the parts that are somewhat civilized. In fact, they can be maybe the worst place to live for the main character. Now again, truly upsetting stuff takes place in this movie, but the filmmaking here is just top-notch and really pretty respectful of the type of stuff that's happening on screen. But in this movie, a young woman is actually hunting down British soldiers and trying to kill them after something terrible happens to her, and it's all thoroughly believable. So it is a revenge movie, but it is also a survival story as they're out in this Tasmanian wilderness. The cinematography is beautiful, the storytelling is top-notch. It is an excellent movie that I would recommend to everyone watching, but the graphic nature of the early portions of the movie are so intense that you do need to tread lightly with The Nightingale. Alright, Christopher Nolan makes the list with my number 2 pick, which is actually going to be his first feature film following Now, I realize a lot of people have not seen this movie. Big Christopher Nolan fans, I'm sure you have, but this is one I've rewatched just recently, and my goodness, does this hold up for a micro-budget movie from an unexperienced filmmaker. I mean, it's his first feature film, and he already had such a firm grasp on storytelling. It's mind-blowing. And the movie itself, the story that unfolds, is fairly mind-blowing as well. You actually follow a struggling writer who decides to start following strangers for as long as he can, just to learn things about their day and where they end up, until he follows someone who actually ends up being a professional thief. From there, he gets sucked into kind of a wild plot. It's all black and white. Again, micro budget, not low budget, micro budget. I mean, the reported budget is $6,000, which is really not much at all to film a movie like this. But most importantly, the twisted, non-linear storytelling that Christopher Nolan has become famous for is actually really strong in following, surprisingly so. So, if you're a fan of his work and you've somehow never seen this movie, make it the first movie you watch off of this list. And then my number one pick is one of the most famously f***ed up movies of all time, Deliverance. Now, most of you watching are probably familiar with several things from this movie, like the banjo music, and the squeal like a piggy sequence, easily the most upsetting part of the entire movie, but you may forget how excellent of a thriller this actually is. It's well shot, the cinematography's top notch, and there's some high tension sequences that follow that really upsetting one that make this just a top-notch thriller that's maybe a little bit overshadowed by some of those more memorable moments that I just mentioned. If it's been a while since you've seen this one, I promise you it's easily one of the best thrillers currently available on Tubi, and if you can't tell, there's a bunch of killer stuff on Tubi right now. Stay tuned for a list of some of the best horror movies on Tubi. That'll be coming out on this channel early in October. So if you're new to the channel, definitely click that subscribe button. And if you liked this episode, you're still watching it, why not let the algorithm know by actually clicking the like button? It makes it more likely for YouTube to recommend me to you again and other content like mine. Thanks again to AG1 for sponsoring another video. Don't forget to check out their link in the video description. But I will keep making these episodes as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this special Tubi episode, and you will see me on the next one.